Our sixth lecture on ancient Rome is going to be on Roman games. We're talking about chariot racing and gladiatorial contests. The first Roman game we're going to talk about is chariot racing, and this was the most popular form of entertainment in the Roman Empire. You want to think of this as the NFL football of ancient Rome. Very much a hold on the culture as, say, the NFL has on the United States today. Now, we've talked about chariot racing a little bit, and we've seen it as an Olympic sport with the ancient Greeks, but it's really the Romans who take hold of this and make it become the cultural driving entertainment source that for the empire that it is. Like we see in, say, NASCAR racing today, or car racing, where you got truck racing and funny car racing and drag racing and monster truck racing. There's different ways of having chariots. So you have the 2, 4, or 6 horse vehicles. Then obviously those horses hitched up to a chariot, with the 4 horse chariot being the most kind of common, or the NASCAR versus all the other car racing teams. And obviously you need a lot of skill and control as a driver to keep 4, imagine holding 6 horses with just your hands to be able to guide them, careening around a racetrack with other racers in there. The chariot racing take place in circuses. Don't think clowns, trapeze artists, seals balancing a ball on their nose. Think circles here, bullet-shaped arenas. Obviously, you want to try to get the horses up to full speed. You need long straightaways to do that, and then you want to be able to send them into quick, tight turns and corners to show up the skill of the drivers and can increase the chances of crashes or clunking into each other or other stuff happening. So that's why I think more bullet shaped, long, narrow, tight turns in it. The largest of the circuses in the Roman Empire was the Circus Maximus in Rome itself. It was estimated to seat over 200,000 people for a single chariot race. You start to do the math. If there's only 1 million people in Rome in the 1st century AD and 200,000 can show up at a single chariot race, you get the idea of 20% of Rome can watch one of these happen at any given time. A quarter of Rome. That's a lot. That's a big deal. We're based out of Chicago over here. Chicago's at 10 million people. That'd be 2 million people, 2.5 million people showing up on a Sunday in the fall to watch a Chicago Bears game. Those are wild, crazy numbers to be able to go and hold there. The modern day record for a sporting event is one of the World Cup finals they had in the 1950s in Brazil, where they jammed 190,000 people into the stadium. There was reports of people on the rooftop looking down in there, and that's one time within, say, the last 150 years to be able to go and do that. So it gives you a sense of the passion and the cultural hold this had on the people of the Roman Empire. Now, like sporting events today, what drives the chariot racing in this time is betting, gambling on the different races, as well as the allure of crashes driving the popularity. There's only so much skill you need to make a left turn for 3 or 4 hours and say like the Daytona 500. So why do you get people turning in? Why do you have eyeballs on these chariot races? Again, trying to smash into each other and do that. Now, chariot racing is not just individuals. It's not Mr. Cranmer, the Cranmer family raising our own funds to be able to do that. Racers would be organized into 4 teams. And again, we use the term lightly and loosely. There's organizations behind this, but it's not as hard and fast as, say, like a NASCAR team ownership or like an ownership of a professional sports team in the United States or even abroad today. So you have 4 teams, and a regular race would roughly have 3 chariots from each team. So usually we like to pause in class and work our way through the math here just to understand the logistics of having a day of chariot racing. If you've got 4 teams with 3 chariots from each team, that's 12 different drivers. If each of those 12 drivers has 4 horses, that's 48 horses for a single race. You got 10 races in a day, for example, and you go and you need horses. That's 480 horses. Think about all the horse poop that you're cleaning up. Right? All those horses have to eat. All have to be watered. So there's a very large logistical base needed just to be able to put on one race, let alone a day's worth of racing. So that's what we see there. Now, these teams don't have a whole lot of real fancy names, and again, more try to think of that if you're in the nosebleeds of the Circus Maximus and you're looking down and trying to figure out who is each individual racer might be hard. So the teams are roughly correspond to what the colors the drivers are wearing, and the teams will be the whites, the greens, the blues, and the reds. So I'm a charioteer. I work with the red team. I'm going to be wearing red colors on my chariot, on myself, to identify me as belonging to there. In these organizations, and again, we could get deep in this as much as we want, roughly have trainings, roughly have funds available, training centers in major cities or at least around racetracks, but there's not a whole lot of coordination. There's not like one owner of the white team for X number of years throughout the Roman Empire. But there is kind of help available to racers working through there. So there's think of these individual teams as more organizations, but there's not as much organizational help throughout the empire. It's kind of more on an individual basis. Like today, people could get really carried away. And like today, and we'll see a couple different examples from the Romans themselves, identify very much with their team. Right? So we usually ask the question in class, does anybody have in their house a room that's just Chicago Bears or just Notre Dame Fighting Irish or just Northwestern? Decorate all their, and that's how people would decorate their houses and other stuff. And again, you're bringing home your boyfriend for the first time. Their dad's usually, what's the question in the Roman Empire? The dad's gonna ask, "Hey, what chariot team do you race for?" And if this is a green family and you root for the Blues, you can get out, or my daughter will find somebody better to date. So that's what we have there. And again, we see throughout the Roman Empire people getting a carry away with this. In the 500 ADs, we have a giant riot, the Nika riots in Constantinople, when in the details, not exactly, so don't quote me word for word, we can look this up ourselves, but the blue team was going to win, and everybody knew the blue team was going to win. So we have all these bets coming in on the blue team, and then when they go and have the race, the red driver wins, and you go and we have this giant riot through the city that takes days to put down. The Roman army needs to be brought into the city. The Emperor Justinian has 1 foot on the dock, 1 foot on the boat, holding his hand out to his empress Theodora, saying, "We gotta go. The city's on fire." And Theodora saying, "You're the emperor. Put an end to this. This is ridiculous. I'm not leaving over a chariot race." And several thousand people die just because their chariot team didn't win. Okay, we can see this happening. We're in end of October in 2024 here. A couple weeks ago, Vanderbilt beat Alabama in Nashville. In the Vanderbilt's, the kids brought up multiple times, Vanderbilt's student section racing down onto the field, pulling up the goalposts and dumping it into the river there. It's not on the same scale, but more things stay the same, the more things change kind of idea. So this is the Circus Maximus in Rome. We can talk about the Hippodrome in Constantinople on a similar scale, a tiny little bit smaller. Same idea. We'll pull out the laser pointer. You have the central area there, and there, as you can see, very much the Romans would, with the Circus Maximus itself, decorate this with trophies and statues and other things from around the empire to show your regular citizen the glory of Rome here. And again, you're careening around here for several laps. We like to show a clip of Ben-Hur, the chariot racing scene from the 1959 Charlton Heston movie, which does a pretty good job of giving at least some small sense of what it would be like to witness a race. There's obviously a little bit of drama to tell the story of that movie within the race, but it gives you an idea of what it looks like when you've got all of these guys and you've got 8 horses across as 2 charioteers are jockeying for a position to go and win. So the size and the scale of the Circus Maximus is hard to kind of put in a scale. We had a couple freshmen bring up, Mr. Kramer, doesn't the University of Michigan at the Big House seat 100,000? They do regularly every weekend, but this is twice that amount. And so that's the kind of thing, and that's the energy that we see at these chariot racings. So we're going to go and we're going to show you here a little bit in that, again, we can very much make the modern connection to sports today. So Pliny the Elder is going to write here in his letters this quote that I like a lot that helps kind of draw some comparisons across time and space. Pliny writes, "I'm amazed that so many grown men are obsessed with a childish passion to look at galloping horses and men in their chariots. If they were attracted by the swiftness of the horses or the skill of the men, one could understand this enthusiasm. But in fact, all they care about is a piece of colored cloth. If the racers in the middle of the race were to trade colors, their fans would change sides and instantly turn against the very drivers and horses whom they were cheering for just a few minutes before. And again, this leads to a pretty good discussion in class when we're talking about this. This happens today when LeBron James in 2006 took his talents to South Beach. What did all the Cleveland Cavaliers fans who have been rooting for him since he arrived do to his jerseys? They burned. And how dare you, LeBron? They didn't care that his family was getting generational wealth from the amount of money that he's going in there, that he's a chance to actually play in a real city and not Naptown, USA, quoting Joe Kim Noah. So that's the idea. And then when he came back to Cleveland, they all celebrated again. LeBron James is back. So just like here, and Plenty's getting the idea that the people in the stands are less caring about the skill and the horses and more about, I'm just going to root for my team. All right, damn the torpedoes, and move on that way. And again, some people, you can see some of these things written on message boards or Discord forums out there. This is a curse that somebody put on one of the charioteers. And so the translation of the Latin is at the bottom. I implore you, spirit, whoever you are, and I command you to torment and kill the horses of the green and white teams from this hour on and from this day on, and to kill Clarus, Felix, Primulus, and Romanus, the charioteers. Another good curse I like is, help me in the circus on November 8th. Bind the arms, legs, ankles, and elbows of Olympius, Olympianus, Scordius, and Venticus, the charioteers of the red. Make them go crazy so they lose their concentration, and gouge out their eyes so they can't see where they're going. Do the same for their horses. So again, wishing ill will on the players. Again, you go to any sporting event, you got the opposing batter steps in the batter's box, and all manner of this, that, and the other is hurled upon them. And again, you can see some of the glee that some people eagerly watch slow motion videos of professional athletes getting injured or rolling their ankle or having body parts bend in ways they're not supposed to do because, hey, they're not on my team, and I'll take all the glory in that. Similarly, we see some people sad because of their charioteer passing away. So this is a kind of think of it as obituary, someone mourning the loss of their favorite chariot. Let victory and sadness break her Inumian palms. O favor, strike your bare breast with unsparing hand. Let honor change her garb for that of mourning, and make our crowned locks, O discolent glory, an offering to the cruel flames. Oh, sad misfortune that you, Scorpus, that's our charioteer, should be cut off in the flower of your youth, and be called so prematurely to harness the dusky steeds of Pluto. The chariot race was always shortened by your rapid driving, but oh, why should your own race have been so speedily run? So the idea that they're sad because their favorite driver has died, and he died at the kind of in his youth, and not able to witness him on the track again. So when we talk about the decorations, we can see this in not only paintings but mosaics there on the left. If we bring out the laser pointer, we've got the different colors. You can see the 4 different teams. Now this is something similar. So like if I've got 2 young daughters right now at this moment while we're recording this, right, if I want to decorate them in Chicago Bears stuff, I might have like kitty Chicago Bears versions for the nursery, and that's what we kind of see here. So it's the 4 teams, but this is more for a kid's room. So they've got more kid-friendly animals that they're going to drive with the same idea. And again, we can see the different thus. And all these, we have famous charioteers, just like how you can name and name drop a Babe Ruth or a Hank Aaron or Lou Gehrig, Joe DiMaggio. Those type of names, a Michael Jordan, a Kobe Bryant, these larger-than-life figures. We see this in the charioteers of this time, where again you walk into someone's house and there's Polydemus driving the horse compressor right beneath your feet as you walk in. So we see this, and again, whole industry built around this. Where again, toys. You're not going to put a little kid in on a chariot in the streets. That'd be dangerous. But they can drive this little toy chariot here and practice and run them with their friends. We mentioned multiple times that the Roman politicians and empire is going to use bread and circuses to distract the people of Rome. So we talked about the circuses. There's a whole industry in and of itself to bake bread and provide this for the people at these races to kind of do that. If you go to Pompeii, you can see a pretty elaborate setup for the town, from the milling and making of dough bread and then going and putting in these giant ovens. In Pompeii and in other Roman cities, you also have, for a variety of different reasons, but also again for the sporting events too, these kind of fast food things where those big holes underneath them would be a big fire, kind of keeping a pot with food in there, and if you go in there, you can go and serve. And we see these a lot, not just in Pompeii, but throughout Rome, as people are going to there, grabbing a bowl of food and enjoying that at the races. And obviously, as they're unearthing more stuff from Pompeii, we want to highlight down here all the fancy decorations that you can have on there. The other Roman game, which seems more caught up in more modern ideas of what it means to be Roman, but might not actually be as popular as we make it out to be here in our present times, are the gladiatorial games. And if you look at the gladiators, they're very much a perplexing feature of Roman life in that we build these giant amphitheaters, the Colosseum in Rome, amphitheaters in Arles in France, in Capua, right? These great achievements in engineering and architecture. And the Colosseum in Rome is on par with a Great Wall of China, with a Hagia Sophia, with a Taj Mahal, with the Great Pyramid of Giza, a Machu Picchu, a Temple of the Sun, and Tenochtitlan. It's an amazing achievement in the sheer size and building of it, and yet it's built to let other people be slaughtered in front of you. And so it becomes very much this interest in why is this space created. I've been joking with the freshmen this year in 2024. The Chicago Bears are looking to spend $2 billion with a bubba B to build a new stadium either on the lakefront or the land that they built in Arlington Heights. That's a whole other discussion. But they're building it so that grown men can ram their heads into each other for a couple hours a single day a week. So it because obviously that's simplifying stuff and we're being a little bit facetious, but that very much becomes this idea of these are engineering marvels, and yet what is the purpose of them? In this case, it's to watch people be slaughtered in front of you for your entertainment. Now, the first quote unquote gladiator fights are going to take place at funerals for Roman peoples. And it's kind of what we saw a little bit with ancient Egypt, in that kind of there's religious aspects to it. There's a sacrificial nature to it. The person dies, giving your spirit some oomph into the afterlife. But like what we see a lot through history, when people start to realize that, hey, I can sell peanuts and I can go and sell beer, or make some money off of the fights themselves, we begin to spin these away from their kind of original function to becoming true entertainments there. As again, going backwards a little bit too, we've seen aristocrats in Rome using games, either the circuses or the gladiatorial games, to gain popularity and aid their careers by putting these on. Okay, we go and we give 100 days of games, and the people are distracted from the political mess that you made or the failures around the world because they're happy with their stuff there. If we're going to the gladiator games, mom wakes you up on a weekday and says, hey, you're not going to school, we're going to the gladiator games. Hey, let's get up and go. What are you going to go and see there? And it's not just men fighting for the entire time. There's going to be 3 parts to the gladiatorial games. And this is very much, again, if these are free, you can kind of pop in and out throughout the day. And there's a rough schedule for most of the games. Again, this is not a hard and fast rule, but in general, overall, if you arrive in the amphitheaters or say the Colosseum in Rome in the morning, you'll see the beast hunts and animal fights, the venatio. This is where, again, we kind of go and you're showing the power and vastness of the Roman Empire, where we can have tigers be shipped alive into Rome. And now what happens if we got 5 tigers and 3 bears thrown in the arena? What's going to happen? Or who's going to win, a bear chained to a pole or 3 bulls who are got the run of the mill there? You can also go and put 4 or 5 guys in there. We can decorate that with giant grasses. And from my vantage point in the nosebleed sections, I can see the lions crouching and moving through the grass that the actual guys in the arena aren't able to see because they're walking through grass that's shoulder length. And so that's very much kind of what's going on in there. At lunchtime or around noon, we'll have public executions, and we're going to go back to this point again and again. The whole point of these gladiator games is for entertainment. So it's not public executions serving, say, and there is a political and judicial aspect of it, but it's very much an entertainment. So we're not going there and we're saying, oh, criminal John Smith was accused of cheating on his wife, or so he's being sentenced to death, and we go chop his head off. There's no entertainment value in that. Okay, there's a head off, there's some blood, but these executions are meant for entertainment. So it's slicing someone across the belly and like a clown with a handkerchief pulling all their stuff out while they're yelling and screaming, tying an animal or a horse to the four limbs of a criminal and sending those four horses in four different directions. You hear pop, 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 right, as that person is pulled literally apart there. And again, to try to excite and entertain the crowd. And then finally, the main event would be the Gladiators and their combats that would close the show roughly in the afternoon. And again, don't this is not a hard and fast thing. This is more generalization, but this is the idea that you can move in throughout the day. I've got to run errands in Rome. Right? I can get there early and catch a beast hunt because the elephants have arrived today, and then I can pop out, run some errands over lunchtime, and then I can still make it back to the Coliseum to see my favorite gladiator fight in the arena. So that's what's kind of going on there. And again, we can show you all the different gladiator stuff and we'll work our way through it. But we want to go and again emphasize the entertainment value of this. So there's parts to this. So a typical day would again, and we should be able to explain this if you need to in a couple sentences. The animal fights, beast hunts in the morning, public executions here at lunchtime, and then the gladiators fighting. And obviously, we've got entertainment and we've got music and sound effects going along with that. Now, who would be one of these gladiators? And they're going to come from a variety of different sources. So, at a ludi, a gladiator school to teach the skills to one of these fighters, we might have criminals, and they're there because they've been convicted of a crime, and their sentence would be to go into the arena. The idea, again, you're not expecting these guys to survive, so it's a death sentence, but at least there's some element of you being in control rather than you're just being hung or head chopped off that way. So criminals, slaves. We see this in the movie Gladiator from about the year, what was that, 1998, which is, oof, makes me feel old. Where again, we have people buying and selling human beings, and men in particular, for the sole purpose of training them to fight in the arena. And then we also, which is an interesting aspect of volunteers, and we'll come back to this sense, we'll come back to this idea in a little bit of why someone would want to volunteer, but people would go and say, yes, I like this, I want to do that, I want to be in there. Now, at this gladiator school, they would be assigned or be able to choose more. Assigning is more likely a certain skill to practice, a certain way of fighting, and be trained by a doctore, a teacher in that mode of combat. The idea being that, again, you want this to be entertainment, and how entertaining is if both guys have swords and shields. So they kind of think about different ways of martial arts, how you might have, say, kung fu or jujitsu or other things like Brazilian jiu-jitsu, that type of stuff. It's the idea that there's strengths and there's weaknesses, and you can go and play them off, and someone who is a very good at this form of combat might be very challenged by a different person in a different form of combat, which kind of, again, reiterates this idea that we want to drive with this, is that these are not events of mindless slaughter. This is not just watching people die. These are carefully thought out struggles for the entertainment of a mass audience. So you wouldn't have the newbie criminal who's there, who's shaking his little boots, go fight up against Mr. Cranmer, the ultimate gladiator, the gladiator champion. It wouldn't be fun, right? It would just be over in a second, and then what's there? So there was a polis system or a ranking system developed to rank the different gladiators. And again, it's not going to be the best system, but it's better than just having random people go up there, so that similar skills of fighters could be put against them. You're not going to have the heavyweight champ fight someone who's in their first boxing match. It was the idea. So you've got people that are ranked up. You can rise up the rankings. You can rise down that way. Different fighting styles would be pitted against each other, and we'll work our way through that. It's less important to know those names of different fighting styles, just know that they exist. So if we got a guy who's got a long shield but a short sword up against a guy with a net and a trident, who's going to win? And obviously, the fun part about that is that it's not only just different men fighting, but it's also the style that they're doing that has its strengths, weaknesses to be able to be exploited and or used to your advantage. We know that gladiators were taken care of There's a lot of money that can be wagered and bet and won from these games, particularly as owners of these slaves or the person who has in charge of these criminals. So you want to incentivize the people to fight well. That goes again to the entertainment of this. So and you want to be able to protect your investment, particularly in the buying and selling of human beings. So it's getting a little bit older now, but there was a pretty recent 2018-2019 discovery of a gladiator cemetery in Turkey outside of a gladiator school that they discovered. And as they're working their way through the skeletons, what they found is that a lot of these guys, particularly in this cemetery, had broken bones. And if you break your bone might heal and might heal fine. You can have all your function, but you're going to see that fusion of the bone healing back together on a skeleton. And we see multiple gladiators with multiple fractures, the bones healing properly, correctly, and then further grown growth after that, meaning that the gladiators were living well. And we have lots of manuals of I'm going to open up Mr. Cranmer's brand new gladiator school. Well, how do I take care of my gladiators? There's manuals that go and do this. When we're picturing our gladiators, don't think of a guy with muscles on muscles on muscles where you can see every kind of ripple of every muscle and tendon when they're swishing their sword. There's entertainment to this. If I've got nothing but muscle on me, I get a cut across my belly. You're cutting through all that muscle. That's not going to end well for me. Think of this more people with a little bit of bulk but can still move. The best example I like to say is offensive and defensive linemen in football. Particularly think of the NFL, these guys have excellent footwork, can really move. They've got big size, but they've got a little bit of heft to them. So if I slice one of these guys across the belly, I might not be getting into a whole lot, particularly if it's superficial, a whole lot of vital organs or other stuff. The guy can continue fighting, but for the entertainment value, the blood is flowing and then it's going from there. So if we're grossing a lot of people out, it's no shame if you are, the question becomes why then are there volunteers? Who's signing up there? If I'm a slave, what's my incentive to fight well rather than just giving up and commit a suicide of some sort? And it's the idea that you can earn your way out, you can fight for your freedom. Particularly for slaves and criminals. And again, it's going to change. So there's not one hard and fast rule, but say you, as a slave, you'd be offered up the chance if you win 25, 30, X number of fights, you can be granted your freedom. And usually, we get to emphasize usually here, it's not the hard and fast rule, but usually the symbol of your freedom is a wooden sword showing that you could go and earn that. But we come back to this idea that we started, who's going to volunteer for it? And again, why do some people want to be rich and famous today? Why do some people want to be professional athletes? The idea of 50,000 eyeballs watching every movement and quiver and shake of your sword and screaming your name when you win and upset when you're down on your back, that's going to drive a lot of people to go and want this and desire to be in this position. So again, we can work our way through all the different fighting, but we see that the Colosseum in particular was said to be able to put on a lot of different things. It's whether this is a hard and actual true thing, we'll lean for it. But the sources tell us from ancient times that the Colosseum in Rome, at least, could be flooded, and you could have naval battles on there to begin to make things a little bit more interesting. Throughout the Roman Empire, we have uh, graffiti on walls describing people's love for their different favorite gladiators. And again, some of these can get pretty risque. I love Mr. Cranmer the Gladiator. I want to have all his babies, and you can fill in the blanks and make it a little bit uh, more PG-13 rated than what I just did. Again, it's not important to know the names of these or the different styles, but it's important to know that there are different styles, and each has a little bit of its own, not only weaponry, but also there's a way to fight as a murmillo versus a secutor. There's different ways to do that. It's not as obvious as say you have a net and a trident, and the other guy's got a sword and a seal. So these guys would have weapons and protections some of the time, and that's what we go and we see. Where are these taking place? In giant amphitheaters. The famous ones, the Flavian Amphitheater, most commonly known as the Colosseum in Rome. And like we said, an engineering marvel. 65,000 people could go watch a gladiator event, and then in just 8 minutes, they all could exit the arena and go about their merry ways for how well it's built. Most modern stadiums around the world, right, their foundational ways of working, how they work at kind of their base level, is based on what the Romans discovered and used to build the Colosseum in Rome. It's that well designed. If you're going to see a gladiator match in the Coliseum towards the bottom, all right, close up, you get the senators and the equestrians. Then you get the middle classes and the women, plebeians, and slaves at the tippity top. Not all of the arenas are like this, but the Coliseum does have the added feature that it's a false floor of its arena. So when you're fighting on there, you're actually fighting on a wooden platform above tunnels with platforms and ramps and elevators to again try and drive the drama and entertainment value of these fights. Two guys are fighting, and it's get a little boring. That would do anything. Well, now a trapdoor opens, and here's a tiger. Ooh, things have spiced up a little bit. Right? The idea that these tunnels connect to the gladiator school under the road across the way, and so you can be like, "Hey, I thought there were elephants today. Why are there no elephants? It's just all crocodiles." And then all of a sudden, the floor opens, and out rises through an elevator 5 elephants with guys on their back, and woof, the grandeur, the theater, the drama of that event. So we see at the Colosseum, that's obviously the most famous one, but we have these throughout the empire. So you can go to Pompeii, if you get there early enough, you can get there before anybody else does and get your picture in there. And the one in Pompeii, which Pompeii is not that big of a city, can seat 20, 25,000 people in its arena. So this is something that, again, drives a lot of people throughout the empire. These gladiators were taken care of. And so what we see here with all these clay pots, and again, you could almost cover a whole person with them, is the holes we want to point out that you could put cold water in, now it becomes an ice pack, or hot water in, and it becomes a hot water heater, be able to take care of these guys. A boxing match, even sometimes you're working out hard in the gym, you're lifting a lot of weights, you're going to feel like you will run through the ringer, and that's not just going and fighting another human being in a life or death match. And so these gladiators are taken care of. When I think of the investment, you've spent time and money, in some cases, buying these guys, training them, shipping them, feeding them across the empire. You were going to take care of them if they get hurt. Like we saw with the chariots, there's a whole souvenir uh, industry built around there as well. This is a glass bowl with gladiators on it. You got a glass cup there on the left. And again, hey, my kids bother me. Hey, go play with their gladiator toys. And so we got a wooden gladiator here in the middle with, you can stick a little sword in the middle. Okay, and so that's what we see there. So this is how the Romans would go and entertain themselves kind of at the height of the empire. What we want to get into a little bit is we built the empire up. Now let's begin to see what's going to bring about the end and fall of the Roman Empire. And we'll see that in our next lecture.